In today's episode, we're talking about why your personal growth is essential to make professional progress. It reminds me of the saying that people are excited or anxious to change their circumstances, all of the exterior, but they're unwilling to change themselves. Therefore, they remain stuck and bound. So if you're feeling a little bit stuck, a little bit bound, in your business, and if you're looking to make progress, personal growth could be the very key to unlock the progress you've been seeking. I remember it's in front of me in 2016, I chose one word to focus on. And guess what that word is? It was growth. I wrote it on this notepad that a mortgage lender gave me. And I wrote down 2016 and I underlined it. And right underneath that, I wrote grow. And growth became my focal point for all of 2016. And looking back, I'll tell you, that was an incredible year of accelerated growth. And the note that I wrote to myself that I still keep in front of me is the one thing that's important to understand about growth is growth, it must be intentional. Growth must be intentional. So today we're going to unpack what that means. How do we go about getting unstuck, gaining clarity, and growing professionally in order to move forward in our business? So, number one, in my notes, I wrote this. It starts with this: make a decision to grow on purpose. Don't grow by accident. Don't choose to wait, as sometimes I've done, meaning wait until the pain is unbearable and now it's time to change. Okay, if you have to do it that way, go for it. And yet start by making a decision to grow on purpose. Next is invest 1 hour a day into growing. Maybe you're like, hey, Chris, I don't really have an hour right now to invest in growing, whatever that means, which we're about to unpack, by the way. Okay, make it 30 minutes. If you don't have 30 minutes, make it 15 minutes a day. So we're going to uncover the 3 Ps of why personal growth is so important for professional progress. It's a lot of P's there. Number one is prepare for growth. Here's what I mean by that. Identify the area you desire to grow specifically. Pick an area. By the way, the best practice at best, pick 2 or 3 areas. I'm a big fan of picking one area. Let me explain what I mean by this. I remember when I launched my real estate business in 2007, I was excited to sign my first client and I went on a listing appointment, that's when I went and I met with somebody that was considering selling their home. And they were selling their home for sale by owner, meaning they didn't want to hire an agent. They wanted to sell their home themselves. So I met with this couple, and I remember coming back to the broker owner of the company I was with at the time, and I was so excited because I got my first listing agreement signed. And that was back when we actually used paper. Not everything was digital like now. And so I brought it back to the man I looked up to the office, and I said, hey, Bob, I have my first listing. And he asked me a very simple question. He said, Chris, wonderful, congratulations. Where are they moving to? And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm not really sure. I told him, I don't know. I can't remember. And he goes, okay. He's very calm and just monotone. And I said, I don't know. He said, okay, Chris. He goes, how long was your appointment for? And I told him, oh, I was there for like an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And he said, well, what did you guys talk about? And I said, well, I just talked about how great the company is, how we have all these services, the photography, all of these nuts and bolts of what we do in order to serve them. And it was in that moment when I was looking at Bob Knitter looking at me, I realized I missed the most important thing when it comes to being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur, we solve problems for others. The bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. And in that moment, I realized that I dropped the ball, meaning I signed them as a client to help them sell their house. And I did not uncover what was next for them in their life. And he said, Chris, that's okay. You're learning, you're new. Go back and ask them where they're moving to next, because maybe you can help them navigate that. And in that moment, I realized, you know what? I needed to learn about sales. What does it mean to be an entrepreneur? because I was a good talker. I enjoyed talking to people, I enjoy meeting strangers. And yet, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, when it comes to being a business owner, I bet you already know that it's much more than just being a good talker. What's Who controls the conversation? It's the person that asks the questions. So, how in the world can I know how to serve my people if I'm talking more than asking questions? So that year, I began to focus on growth, and I narrowed down the one way I could grow professionally in order to better serve people was by one thing, by getting more skilled at asking questions. Therefore, in 2016, I planned out my year for professional growth. I signed up for the John Maxwell certification because after thinking about it, I thought John Maxwell is great at asking questions. Matter of fact, he wrote a book called Everyone Communicates, but Few Connect. I started with that one. Over the years, I started to log powerful questions and drop them into Google Documents. And last year I was going through them, and I, without exaggeration, have dozens, I would say near 100 pages of questions. Sometimes I'll go through a book and I'll just write down questions as a result of something I read in that book. Well, one of the things that ended up becoming of all my questions is last year I released a book. It's on Amazon. It's called 1500 Coaching Questions to Unlock Your Potential. How did I create that? Well, I went to my Google Drive and I started sorting through all of those pages of questions. And a lot of them I just copied and pasted over into a document, and that became a book I created. My point is think about an area that you desire to grow professionally in. Maybe it's like me, it was developing questions. This year, my focus is communication, to be an effective communicator. So number one is you want to identify the preparation part is identify the area you desire to grow specifically. Be specific. An example would be this year, my primary focus to grow, to thrive this year is to become a more effective communicator. So I have a plan. My printer was not printing. And so I trust that you could see that. The screen may be too bright. But what it is, it's a one-page Google document where it's my year plan this year of how I intend to grow when it comes to being a communicator. And if you could read it, it would say this: my number one main focal point this year for growth is communication. And I hired two coaches. I hired Omar. I hired Diana Kokoska and John Maxwell. Omar is phenomenal when it comes to communication. He's a pastor. He's my coach for personal brand. Diana Kokoska, she's phenomenal, and she knows John Maxwell well, and I admire them both and their communication skills. So one of the ways that we can identify an area to grow is by thinking, okay, who is it that does that thing well? And those are some of the people I've identified. A person that I'm actively studying the framework and how they communicate is a gentleman named Myron Golden. I'm also paying attention to a gentleman named Andy Stanley. And then I have a mentor friend that over the phone and Zoom is helping me become a more effective communicator, to be more clear and concise when I speak, a gentleman named David Higginbotham. Then I wrote down the 5 or 6 books that I intend to read this year, such as Super Communicators, One to Many, 16 Laws of Communication. And then I wrote down some other things that I'm focusing on under the umbrella of communication. So after we identify the area we desire to grow in, next we want to put it into practice. We don't want to just be a hearer of good information. We want to be a doer. So we put it into action. We take little bits of pieces of our learning and begin to implement. We can't change all of a sudden overnight. It's one of those things where growth happens gradually and then suddenly. We take these little micro steps towards continuing to grow and make progress. So we have preparation, we have put it into practice, take action. And after we take action, it's either going to work for us or not. So it's appropriate that we have some time to ponder on it. to ponder on it. Here's what I mean by ponder. It could look like journaling. Now, when I say journaling, I mean like the old school pen and paper. I like the moleskin journals right here. And I like to journal on things, but maybe that's not where you're at. Maybe you're at a spot where your next step isn't so much journaling. Maybe it's to just jot it down. What is it you jot down? Well, part of investing the 1 hour a day into your growth, think about it. It could be listening to books. It could be listening to audiobooks on Audible. Maybe it is physical books. By the way, this is the one that I started to read in 2016. It's my recommendation on personal growth. It's John Maxwell's 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. Incredible book. So maybe it's a hard copy book where you start to go through and underline it, and you pick one thing a day or one thing a week to jot in your journal that's standing out to you. Maybe a sentence or two, or maybe just a word. So maybe you begin not so much to journal, but to jot. You pick a phrase, you pick a word, and you scratch it down. You scribble it down on a piece of paper. That could be your next step. So you ponder on it. And that's the pondering is the process of reflection. You think about, hey, how can I implement this? Did it work for me? Did it not? That's how we learn, right? We take in new information, but we don't just take in information for information's sake. It's not just to know more, it's to implement it so we experience transformation. All change begins with self-awareness. Become more aware, which is why I started the beginning of today's episode. What's the one area that you desire to level up and in this year in your life that would move the needle forward for you professionally? Because ultimately, your business grows to the extent that you do. My question is are you growing intentionally, or are you growing accidentally with no real aim or intention? I propose that by having a personal growth plan and thinking about the area you desire to grow this year, it could be the difference maker for you. We'll see you next time.